kind of needs no introduction. And I want to let her introduce herself, but I will say she's an amazing podcaster. She's the drone queen. She is a top creator, and I really look up to her. So Christine, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Leah. You're such a good hostess. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to see all of you. And I'm actually going to be doing something today that might annoy the crap out of a lot of you, which is I'm going to have Leah share my slides. And the reason is because, well, I'm a nonstop traveler. I don't have access to a second monitor right now. So pull up those slides, Leah. But the most important thing for me is my ability to see you and see the chat. So I will constantly be asking questions and looking for nods or thumbs ups or like yeses or like nos, because this presentation will change based off of what your needs are. Because like Leah said, like and I was kind of asking myself this question. I was like, why? Like, why would I want to spend my time giving a free presentation about Instagram? And I'm like, you know what? It's because I really care about this travel community. And if you don't know me, I'm Christine Lozada. I'm a travel creator, a drone pilot, a podcast host, and I really love this community. And I also really love giving back. And I want to start with this first question on the first slide, which is how happy are you with your Instagram? And just drop it in the chat. So a 1 if you're unhappy, a 10 if you're super happy, you know, obviously other numbers in between. I would love for you to, I mean, obviously you can pin my video, but you don't need to. It's great to see everybody. I'm loving what I'm seeing in here. It's kind of all over the board on where people are at. But one thing I also do, aside from creating for myself, is I create for other places, or I do social media consulting for other places. And some of you may have heard, for example, I'll just name 2 of them. Wonderful. I'm actually the social media director for the Wonderful community. So I have a lot of travel content that I'm constantly consuming from other creators and advising them. And I also do a lot of social consulting and strategy for a team called One Blue Ocean. And they are bringing the ocean, they're a nonprofit bringing the ocean to 1 billion people by 2030. And if you know me, I love creating summer beach content. So I help them a lot with their strategy as well. And I wanted to give back and share some of the things that I think might help you. So on the next slide, I would love to hear, just so I can get a feel of the room, how advanced are you? Are you a newbie? Are you kind of sort of in between? Or do you feel like you're pretty advanced? And I'm actually going to ask a challenge of a few of you in here because we got some fire creators in the house. Maria, I'm looking directly at you. Mari, I'm looking at you. Don't make that face, girlfriend. If you have additional tips to add, Ava, I'm definitely looking at you. If you have additional tips to add in what I'm saying today, please drop these in the chat, because you're kind of seeing here, like a lot of people are kind of on the newer side, or maybe they need some advice. And it's very important to get a lot of opinions, because the way I feel about Instagram is people take their rabbit's foot, they rub it, and then they blast that post or those stories or that reel, and they hope that it works, right? And so I would love as many opinions as possible. So please add your tips as we're going. A Twitter expert. I freaking love that, Kelly. And on the next slide, and you can think about this now or later. And this is why I'm having Leah share my slides for me, so I can watch the chat and watch you guys. Your key challenge today. And you don't have to write it now, but I will be incorporating questions into this and also leaving time at the end, depending on how much I blab. But be thinking about this and feel free to drop it in the chat as we go. And on the next slide, this is what we're talking about today. And if you've been to some of my other presentations on this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm bringing together kind of the best of all the presentations I've done and dropping them into today's chat. And I actually just got, well, actually, no, I'm going to save this story for later. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And I'm actually very excited because for this first portion, we're going to be sharing some info about Reels with one of my favorite creators, which Janine is going to be coming on in just a minute. And Janine, for logistical sake, if you could drop those 2 reels either in the chat or to Leah, whatever makes sense, so that we can screen share that shit. Cool. And let's dive into this kind of first part, which is intros. Enough of intro. I love Instagram. I actually really love Instagram, and it'll come out why. I feel, even though as we especially dive into analytics, it might not always seem like I'm winning on the platform. I'm going to uncover for you why I love Instagram and how it's really worked for me so that it can work for you as well. And on the next slide is a creator that I really love, Janine. If you don't know her, at The Wild Explorer, she has grown, one more slide, Leah. She has grown in a phenomenal way via Reels. And so actually, I just want to start with on this next slide, and here's some links for you as we go through today. Oh, I just gave you double links, but I'm dropping some links in there for my Instagram profile. And I'm going to be actually, if you have your phone, have it handy nearby, because I'm going to be asking you to follow along with some things, totally optional. You don't have to follow along. And then I will also be talking through some resources that are available to you on my Create page. So on this next slide, there's kind of a couple things to know. How many people here, and drop a yes in the chat if so, how many people here follow @creators? The Instagram account @creators. Yep, I see some hands, I see some yeses in there. If you're not yet following @creators, I encourage you to do so, because toward the end of last year, they started becoming a little bit more transparent about what's going on in the algorithm, the latest sounds to use, some of their latest tips, etc. And if you haven't been closely following them, I'm going to bring in some examples of what I have been watching or reading from their account and sharing them and insights for you today. So I encourage you to follow @creators. This first bullet point, a lot of people, I don't like to keep my apps updated. Like, I don't want the latest updates. It messes everything up. Not with Instagram. Update the app. You need to update the app. And the reason for that is they're currently testing a lot of new features. How many people have seen the new pin feature? So you can pin posts to the top of your Instagram profile. And this is something when we start talking about making sure your foundation of your profile, the foundation of what people are seeing above the fold, keeping that right and tight. We'll talk about what you might want to pin there if you haven't already made those choices or you haven't started using that yet. And I'll talk to you about what I will be using. And so every time they put out a new feature, they are always pushing people toward that new feature. And Janine did a really awesome job of jumping onto Reels and consistently posting Reels around a similar topic that helped her to grow very, very quickly. Janine, you in the house, girlfriend? She's in the car. And by the house, I mean the car. Oh, and she's on mute. We like it. So if you do interpretive dance, I will translate it for you.
I had the chat pulled up.
Oh, I love it. Is there more intro to intro you with?
No, let's just get to it.
Yeah, let's get to it. So actually, let's start with this question. So if you're in the chat, tell me if you are currently posting Reels today. Are you currently posting Reels today? Put that in the chat. And Janine, Leah, there's 2 links I'm going to add into the chat in a second so that you can, I know this is going to be a wild goose chase. Janine, I would love for you to kind of so before we dive into some of the tactical things about Reels, I would love for you to share just kind of your high level Reels strategy today. Like, what does that look like? Like, how often are you posting? And how are you approaching your Reels today?
I'm posting about 5 times a week, Reels.
Okay.
That changes a little bit every now and then. When I was consistently growing, I was posting almost every single day, at least 6 times a week, in addition to a static post. And the static post was basically the same information, maybe changed around a few words, but why write the same caption twice? Was kind of like how I saw it. But yeah, right now about 5 times a week. Consistency is everything. It goes such long ways, and it's not just like, okay, I'm going to post every day for 1 week and see what happens. Some people see success in 30 days. That's great. Keep it going. Keep it going. You skip one day, get right back on it. But consistency is key.
I would agree. And I'm sure some of you are hearing, oh my goodness, like 5 times a week. How am I going to do that? Right? We're going to talk about consistency in a little bit, but I think it's important that you choose a cadence that works for you and then you just stick with it. And when I say stick with it, I'm talking at least stick with it for a month or two. Like that 1 week ain't going to give you enough. And when we dive into analytics, we'll uncover that a little bit more. But that's what's working specifically for Janine at this moment. And so Leah's pulling up one of her reels right now. And Janine, I would love for you to talk about, or maybe you are.
Sorry, because I'm screen sharing and you guys dropped me a bunch of links. I'm going to
Oh, you got to go into the chat.
Yeah. So
told you I was going to make you
do
work,
this
girlfriend.
first? I know. It's like, oh my gosh, a lot of thinking.
Wait, I have a better idea.
Yes.
So I dropped the link in the chat. I would just love for everyone to, and I already said it. This is a, have your phones out. Everyone click on that link and follow along on your own. And for the second one, I don't know, maybe we'll be ready, maybe not. Janine, are you able to speak to it without looking at it?
Yeah. I just need to know which one it is.
That's okay.
But you did it in order, right? Like the first one.
Let me share this one, Janine, and you can chat about it, okay?
Perfect.
1 second.
You're like, oh,
Sorry.
Christine, why do you have to be traveling and you can't host your own
Can
event?
we see this one?
Janine, you're in a boat.
I am in a boat and I'm with Ava, who's in the chat right now.
So as you chose this reel, what are some of the key ingredients that you have in the reel every single time you post them?
Storytelling, call to action, and just keeping it visually interesting. I think those are like my 3 go-tos. I do short clips. I don't have like the same pan. If you're always like from left to right, that just isn't very interesting. So I'm switching it up. I got a 360 camera, just like you, Missy, that you could see there. So like just having those different perspectives in a video. And obviously you don't have to have, another like camera or, you could shoot everything on your iPhone. It's fine. Like I've done that for so long. But just having different perspectives, right? Like not just doing a pan from left to right, doing it above, doing, just keeping it very visually interesting, keep it moving. And then storytelling, right? Like it could be a beautiful sunset, but like tell some sort of story or tell like, where is this? What am I looking at? And that could be verbally in a voiceover. It could be text overlay, or it could be in the caption. And then the call to action.
Let me just double click on the story really quick, because one thing, as I dive into this reel, which I have not engaged with just yet, holy crap, that's a lot of likes and comments. Nice work, girlfriend. Like when I look at this, there are various ways that she could have started her story, but she immediately starts with something that draws you in. She starts with, did you know? Like, did you know that you could rent boats, blah, right? And so it's something where as a viewer, it immediately draws you in because it's like, oh, like, where is this? And as a viewer, I'm immediately interested, right? And not only that, if I'm not listening, and I think for this one, yep, you actually talk over it, right? And it's really important that for somebody who might be using a public restroom and looking at their phone and taking their sweet time, that they don't want the audio to play, right? And so you have to account for people who are not going to listen to it with sound. The old statistics used to be 60%. 60% of people on Instagram do not have the sound on. That has since changed given the prominence of Reels and some of the latest changes in the app. Because they will now be following your sound settings on your phone. That's a new change to Instagram coming up. But you have to account for most people are used to not using sound. And one thing for you, if you're like, ooh, I don't know if my audience does, this is a great time to ask. Talking to your audience and asking them in the stories. You can just ask a quick story and do a poll. Do you have the audio on when you're looking at Instagram so that you can get a sense of your audience? Because some people might have a huge audience of people who love audio, and others like mine don't really care about the audio. And so Janine's doing a couple things. She's drawing people in the beginning. She has the text in case you don't have the audio, and you can hear her voice if you choose to have the audio in addition to sound. And I'm sure we'll get into sound in a second. Okay. Call to action. Talk to us about your call to action, Janine.
Call to action. So in my caption, I have share this with your friend. I have save this, and I have follow at Wild Explorer. A lot of the times, well, I don't want to say a lot of the times, but there's going to be times where this video is going to pop up on somebody's feed who isn't following me. So I'm just reminding them like, hey, you like what you see? Follow. And I also do that as a text overlay on the video. I don't do that on all my videos, but always in the caption.
I think that's really important, because if you think about what Instagram is currently doing with Reels, they are often pushing them to people who do not currently follow you. So if you post a Reel on your feed, it goes to your audience plus new people. If you post it to just Reels and not on your feed, it's just going to new people. And so with that, you don't want to make those new people who are like, ooh, like this looks kind of interesting. I wonder who Janine is. Like they are literally there in the caption and they are seeing her tagging herself, and it's right there and a lot easier to click on it versus going back up to the top, finding her name and then clicking on it up there. And not only that, in that first reel, at the very least, I don't know if you guys looked how freaking long this caption is. There's a ton of value in there. It doesn't, I'm not implying that it has to be a long caption, but what I'm saying is Janine is providing a ton of value to the viewer and to the reader. There's a lot in there. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Janine? Call to action, story, visuals.
You know what I like to do, and I know you've said this, Christine, making it shareable, making it savable. I do add a lot of info in there, and it's not just, fluff. I want to make it easy for someone looking at this to be like, I want to go there. What do I need to know? I want to share my tips. It's kind of like a mini blog in a sense, right? Like this is just a quick, like, hey, bring this. Do the rowboat if you want an arm workout. If not, do the pedal boats. Just like helpful information and just something that's easy to digest and something that someone wants to save.
Yeah. And actually, let's talk about creating the reel really quick, because I know you use a few different apps sometimes. But to answer Dolores's question, how do you do a reel? Are you splicing a video together, or does Instagram have tools? And I would say for me personally, and if you create reels, drop your answer in the chat as well so we can have more perspectives. I bounce around between two things. One, I'm either just straight up using Instagram in their tool. So in their reel tool, I'm just creating it. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but in the last 2 weeks, they're doing a lot to make it easier, where they will create one of your story highlights and turn it into a reel for you. I just recently posted one of those. And I did zero work. All I did was I created a caption and that was it. Or they're doing things like creating a template, whereas you're scrolling through reels, you'll see someone else's reel and there might be a button on the bottom left that says template. And when you click on it, all you got to do is add your own shots to it. And then boom, it creates a reel for you. So they're making it easier and easier so you can create within Instagram. Or for me, I often use other apps. If I'm creating 80 to 100 reels in one sitting, which I can bounce out in a half a day, I will use Final Cut Pro on my laptop, or I will use apps on my phone, such as CapCut, or I'll use KineMaster, and I'll drop those in the chat. Janine, what are you using?
I'm using InShot 98% of the time. I might use CapCut if there's a certain effect I want to do, but InShot's just so easy. I've been using it for years, so it's my go-to.
Yep, love it. And let's actually just talk about music for 1 second. And I know we have 4 minutes to spare. How are you choosing? Actually, why don't you start with this next reel that's on the screen, your California one. I think that's Big Sur. How did you choose the music for this? And how are you thinking about music overall?
So for this one, I actually use templates, the new template feature. I was browsing and so how I would usually look for music, like if I want to find trending sounds, I will just scroll through reels for 2 minutes and save whichever ones are trending. You could see which ones are trending because it'll have like a little like arrow pointing like diagonally. Those are the songs or sounds that are trending. I will save those and then I'll use them right away. I'll use them within that week because, you know, if it's trending now, I don't know if it's going to be trending. To use them as soon as possible. So I saw that this was a template, which just made it super easy to upload those, I think 5 or 6 different clips, 5 clips. So went into my camera roll, picked whatever, and it created the video for me. So I was like, all right, this is done. And it ended up doing really well. And you know, there's probably a number of reasons why it did well, but you know, it was really easy to make with that template. So take advantage of that.
They're making it easier and easier because, and now if you're looking to kind of like broader marketing tools like Hootsuite, who puts out like the latest and greatest on trends, the latest and greatest on marketing strategies, they're talking about how these reels are increasing people's watch time, people's usage time on Instagram. So it's in Instagram's best interest to get you to create as many reels as possible, as easily as possible. So keep the app updated, keep an eye on all of those tools that are coming out. We've gotten some fire tips from Janine, who has a hot meeting in 2 minutes. And I will actually share one thing that I do, because if you're like, ugh, I don't know what the trends are on the music. And actually, hold on, Janine, on average, what's the average number? Like, what's the most number of views you've gotten on a reel? And like, what's your average?
Probably most like 800,000 or something like that. Average, I would say between probably now around 20,000.
Okay, so a couple people, that's not bad. Like that's amazing, right? So that's great success for her. And so instead of, for me, having to like figure out what the sound is, like listen to a lot of sound, look at what's trending, I go to Janine's profile and I see what songs she used, and then I copy that shit. And of course, like, you know, it's a totally different reel. It might not be about me boating with Ava, although I wish it was. It's going to be about something else, but she's already done the work of looking up the sounds that are trending. Why wouldn't you just use the same sound, right? And then put save or share or follow the Wild Explorer at the bottom. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Janine. If people have questions, can they DM you on Instagram? I kind of set you up. You're not allowed to say no to that if I tee it up like
absolutely.
that.
I actually just added that in the chat. So
awesome.
Thank you all.
Please give her a follow. Watch her reels. I study them. She does a really great job. So again, her kind of takeaways were storytelling, call to action, great visuals. And hopefully you got some tips on reels there. So you have a hot date. So you drop off. See ya.
Thank you,
Leah. Leah, bring it back to the presentation.
I totally forgot I was sharing my screen. So I was like going to Janine's blog. Thank goodness that's all I was doing. But I was like going to her blog to make sure her URL was still the same. Okay.
Start making a reel. So the reason why I wanted to deep dive onto reels for a bit with Janine is because this has been a really great way to get found. And one of the other things, especially for those, and I saw in the beginning, a lot of people saying like, oh, I'm more on the newbie side or intermediate side. So I have 2 Instagrams, my personal one, and then my podcast one. And what's interesting is there's one more thing Instagram is doing if you haven't really jumped on the bandwagon reel. When I look at my @Christine Lozada account, my reels get like a couple thousands, sometimes a couple hundred views. Like it's crap. It's not that much at all. But on my new podcast account @Badassery Podcast, I'll create a reel that took me about 3 minutes to make, boom, 37,000 views. In other words, what Instagram is doing right now is it's trying to incentivize other accounts who have not yet really created reels to go create reels. Because when they do that to my badassery account, if I was a new creator, I'd be like, ooh, I should do that again. And then I'll like go create more reels. Whereas for me, my @Christine Lozada account, Instagram's like, yo, I know that girl's coming back to create a reel. We don't have to push it as hard. And so what I'm encouraging you to do, if you have a newer account or if you've not created reels yet, when you start, you will likely get pushed to a lot of people. And so keep that in mind as we dive into this next part, which is around having a really solid foundation. And I'm going to try to fly through this in about 10 minutes. But this is the equivalent of, in an old life, I used to be a personal trainer. And actually guess in the chat, what's the first muscle that we have people work before anything else? Just guess for a second. And Leah, bring me to my first slide. So what's really important is having a clear profile on who you are and what you create, what people can expect from your Instagram profile. I love these answers with the brain. It's your core. It's your core because too many people like get big biceps and like huge thunder thighs, and then they have nothing in their foundation to hold them up. And so it's your core, your brain. I like it. All right. So my profile is actually something that once a month, I have a reminder on my calendar. That reminder on my calendar, it's my, let me make sure my branding, my personal branding is correct. I open up a incognito window on Chrome. I Google my name and I just make sure everything looks right and tight, right? Is there something weird that's in there that shouldn't be in there that I can fix? Does that bring up a website or a social post that I didn't mean to really have out there? And I do this cleanup. And during that cleanup, I redo all my profiles. Yes, it's like checking your credit report. And so what I have in my profile is what I want somebody who spends 2 seconds looking at my profile to know immediately. And it's very clearly laid out with a call to action. And so if there's nothing else you know about me, these are the things I want you to know. And it does, you don't have to put emojis and all that stuff, but just your profile for someone who does not know you. They need to know who you are by glancing at it. So having a really clear profile, and I encourage people, especially travelers, if you want people following your travel content, to have a picture of you and your eyeballs are showing. So not the you with the hat looking backwards, and not the you with sunglasses on, and not the you covering, like, this is a social platform. People are looking for connection, and the number one way to connect with somebody is often by looking them in the eyes. So I encourage you to have a picture, if that's appropriate for you, of you with your eyeballs available to be looked at. All right. I'm actually going to show you something that I pulled. This is kind of personal from my personal branding strategy book. So on the next slide, and this is also something that every kind of couple months, I change this. So this is what my overall goal used to be. And I have, so just kind of keep that in mind and switch to the next slide, Leah. And it's just a little bit of a tweak. So I have gone from kind of helping people to live a bigger life to helping people to like get their dreams, Like that's what I care about. And it comes through in 3 things: helping people to open their eyes by traveling the world, seeing it from an amazing new perspective by conquering the sky with a drone, and by being just 1% more badass than they were today than they were yesterday. And that's through my podcast. So those are my content pillars. And if you're like, whoa, what the heck is a content pillar? On the next slide is a resource for you. So I just updated this website. If there's typos on it, too bad. But I have in there another workshop that I did for Wonderful that kind of dives into content pillars. And one thing I will likely do is another workshop that brings people through how to create your own personal brand strategy playbook, because it's my North Star. When I am getting, and because I do, I don't know why, but I get hundreds of hate comments a day. So when that stuff starts rolling in hot, I knocked off my rocker because I'm so clear in what I'm trying to create. And it's very clear on my profile as well. So kind of those three things that are my content pillars. In the next slide, you'll see that those are on my profile and they are in my highlights. Too many people, especially travelers, will just throw anything into their highlights. Like, I went to so-and-so place, I went to blah. And sometimes that's super relevant because on my highlights, I do have some of the places I've been to, but it's places I've created a boatload of content around that people can find more about later. And so what I have in here are the key things that people are coming to me all the time. The things that people come to me all the time for are in my highlights, because on the next slide, this is the way I think about my audience. And this is really important because too many people follow the shiny objects. I'm going to create 1 million reels. What am I going to create them around? So there's one thing I really, really love, and I have to hold back on Instagram at looking at this thing because it will mess up my algorithm. I love old fat pugs. Like, actually, no, I'm not going to name handles. I love looking at old pugs. Like, old pugs are the best. And if I were to truly create the content I want, I would just post about old pugs all day long. But I will get a lot of pug owners and pug lovers to follow me, and that's not what I want. And when you're a travel creator, usually people are very broad. I love to travel the world. I love adventure. Or, I speak to families, which are all great things, but start to get more specific. And when you go to the grocery store tonight, or you go eat out at a restaurant or use something, I literally want you to look around into the eyeballs of the people around you and start literally picking them out, because behind each additional metric number that's on your profile stands an actual person. And I want you to look around like, do you want that person following you? Do you want that person following you? And one of the other things that's on that landing page, christinelozada.com/create, is a lot of people ask me like, well, what should I create content around? And I gave a perspective because I just got off of a cruise and I created a boatload, cruise full of content about that cruise. And on that cruise, every single day, like clockwork, Christine, I'm on this cruise because of you. Christine, your video on blah, blah, blah was so helpful. And I went and ate at that restaurant tonight. Christine, like, people were finding me and thanking me for the content I was creating. And as I looked into each of their eyeballs and picked my jaw up off the ground, I was like, this is exactly like, Kate, you are exactly who I thought would be following me. Or like, Emily, like, yeah, girlfriend, like, you are exactly who I thought would be following me. And so I want you to go beyond the number of people that liked you and how many people are following you today. And, oh my God, so-and-so unfollowed me. Behind each number is a real person. And who is it that you want following you? And it needs to be so clear in your foundation, in your profile, in your highlights, who you stand for. On the next slide is part of my brand strategy book. I get really specific. I have avatars. And so, yes, my analytics, which we will get into, says I basically have a male dominated audience between the ages of 25 to 55. But, and I wrote just about Eric here, because if you went to my other one, I talked about my female audience person. But Eric is a city dweller. He works in the corporate world. He's kind of an adventurer. He doesn't have a lot of F's to give. And he wants helpful travel content. And he's going to do his part in helping his girlfriend to plan their travel by watching my video. Like, one of the #1 comments I get is, I'm glad I'm not a jealous girlfriend because my boyfriend totally loves you and has helped to plan our trip because of you. Like, he listens to you. And I'm like, yes, like, that's exactly who I want. And so what I'm encouraging you to do here is get down to the nitty-gritty detail and have a visual in your head of who you are creating for, so that every time you sit down to make content, you know who you're speaking to. And this has helped me a lot. So on the next slide are those 2 videos. I literally just created a 3rd YouTube channel. Not that I should have more than one, but those videos are available to you on that website. Let's talk about consistency. because consistency is something on the next slide that I think about in the same way that I have 3 people who manage my money and investments. And when I think about that, it's, well, the stock market tanked today, so I'm going to pull out completely. Like, you cannot think about Instagram in that way. If you go to my profile on Instagram and you look at my latest Reels performance, it's shit. Like, it's really bad, like really, really bad. But I haven't stopped. I don't stop. In the same way with your investments, as soon as you stop, your money isn't growing on itself. It's the same thing with Instagram. You need to weather the storm and you need to be consistent. And so people always ask me, oh my God, Maria, you saw my snowboard video. People always ask me, how often should I be creating? And I want to give you 2 perspectives. One is, how often can you reasonably post? Stick to that and don't even do it for 30 days. Try to do it for 45. In theory, do it for 60. Because when we get into the analytics section, you're going to want more data. And that might just be a little bit. So for my Badassery podcast account, that's an account that has a different goal than my travel and drones account. That one is really just to highlight what's going on in my podcast. How many people here, by show of hands, or tell me in the chat if you actually use Meta? So that's the business for Facebook, ties Facebook and Instagram together, their business analytics tool. If you're not using Meta today, I encourage you to spend 5 minutes just looking at it. Just look at it. Because in the last 96 days, Facebook and Instagram have made huge changes to that business platform, making it significantly easier and taking massive amounts of business away from Hootsuite, from Buffer, from the other scheduling systems, by making it incredibly powerful with analytics, the ability to schedule posts, and the ability to just manage your social. And so I encourage you to look at it, because on my Badassery podcast, I schedule in 1 hour 2 posts per week. And I have that scheduled out until August. It goes that far out, right? I do that in 1 hour. I put out content until August, and it's just going to bam, 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 go out there until August. On my Google Calendar, I have a reminder, oh, at 1 p.m. tomorrow, this is going live. And so I have my social media team go in and engage as people are coming in and responding to things. My girls are going in and responding back to them. And so I have scheduled that in, and that is my process for getting content consistently out. And so I encourage you to look at Meta if you're not already there, which kind of goes into this next part. So this next set of tactics are really around mindset. And there's a couple things I want to talk to you about in here. Oh man, your audience first. So your audience first. And this is a shift from being a traveler. I see this a lot, especially as the social media director for Wonderful. I'm a traveler. I love showing my travels, and I blog about it, or I vlog about it, or whatever it is. And I just want to share it with the world. That same thing by someone else who does the same exact thing gets them paid on Instagram. Drop it in the chat if you're currently being paid by Instagram today. I just got my check for about $1,000 from last month by spending about 20 minutes on the platform creating reels. So I was pretty stoked on that. But what happens is they see that and they're like, oh, wait, no, I want to do that. Like, how do I do that? And so there's a shift from being a traveler to a travel creator. And if you think about the 2 reels, this light is driving me crazy. Sorry. If you think about the 2 reels that Janine shared, how much of it was about Janine? How well did you get to know Ava? Which, by the way, she's freaking awesome. Make sure you follow her. She has really great content on Instagram, which I actually personally really love. They're awesome people. Those reels were not about them. No one cares. The way I think about creating content is I am in a bathtub drinking my favorite glass of champagne. Somebody is knocking on the door and I got to get out of the bathtub, put down the champagne, put on a freaking robe, be cold, open the door. And what I'm opening the door to is that piece of content. I just went to World Domination Summit with Erica, for those who know Erica in the Nomadic Network. But one of the things that was fascinating to me is that in the olden days, our grandparents, the amount of content our grandparents would consume in 30 days is what we consume in the first 15 minutes of our day. And I share that because we are bombarded with content. We are creating massive amounts of content. It must have value to who you care about, to who your audience is, right? Janine talked about the actual boating. She talked about how to go do that drive that she was on. She's not talking about living her best life, right? Janine lives a pretty sweet life. BTW, I've traveled with her a lot. She's awesome. And so your audience first. And one of the things I have written on my computer on a Post-it note is audience first. Because all the time I want to talk about me, but don't make it about me. Don't make it about you, make it about them, what helps them. But it's still in your personality, in your voice. All right, so your audience first, because what you really want is you want to be social on a social platform. So on the next slide, Leah, a couple tactics for you to consider. Is this is a social platform, and as much me as we want to make it, I love tagging people in to posts. I love talking to other people from posts. I wouldn't be surprised if Leah or Maria or Maria, actually I feel like I haven't done this on your accounts. I'll talk to other people like, whoa, like, oh, I had no idea. Like, you got to see this. Or like, oh my God, you love coffee. Like, you need to go check out Leah LA and Flight. She is like the caffeinated traveler. And I will talk about other things or other things people need to see. I feel like, Rory, I was tagging you in on recently on a bunch of things also. But be social on a social platform, tag other people in. And another way to be social is think about what Janine did in her reels, right? She started with, did you know that blah, 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 blah. And she usually ends with, would you go here? Which is such an easy thing to be like, yes or no, right? Or like, didn't know about that. It's easy for people to respond to something like that. Too many travelers will make a statement in their posts. Belize is the best place to scuba dive ever, period. Hashtag Belize, hashtag Belize travel. That's it. And it's like, okay, like, how do you respond to that? Like, you don't respond to that. It's like, okay, cool, next thing, like, whatever. But what Instagram is doing is, so actually we didn't talk about what success is in the algorithm. Reels, you want someone to watch it all the way through and hopefully watch it twice. Anything that you will do to get people to spend more time on Instagram, they are going to reward you by pushing you to more people, pushing you up in those hashtags, pushing you to the explore page. You want someone to watch the reel all the way through. On your static posts, you want people to save it. You want people to share it. You want people to write comments on it. What can you do to get people to save and share it? Aside from reminding them to do it, give them helpful content, make it social. Open the door to conversation. So that's on posts and on reels. Let's talk about stories for a second. In stories, I'm just going to share one piece of this because I have on that christinelozada.com/create page, I have a literal example of me creating stories. Tell a story and try to do a finish rate of 70% or more. How many people calculate their Instagram stories finish rate? Tell me in the chat. I'm really curious about that. So if you look at my stories today, there's a couple things that I'm doing in there that are helping. Actually, hold on, we're going to come back to that. Let's just talk about finish rate. A finish rate is the number of people who watched your first story. Let's say 100 people watched my first story. Let's say I have 10 slides in my stories versus how many people watched the very last one. If 70 or more people are still watching by the last one, boom. That's a great finish rate. So I have 70 people hanging on. If you have 100 in the beginning and only your mom is watching at the very end, that's not good. That means you need to work on your storytelling techniques. It means you need to tell a stronger story. So just keep that in mind and let's hit that next slide. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying in the profile. People are here to be social, but one other thing is people are craving real. And so on this post, I'm actually sharing some of my biggest fails ever. And it was kind of like a vulnerability post. And the number of people that responded to this was more than I could possibly have imagined. And so as we get into analytics, I want you to just think about how can you be the most real you showing up in your content. And Ava, I'm gonna give you another shout out, does a really good job of this when she's talking about her relationships. All right, let's talk about the next one, which is looking at your post performance. Tell me in the chat or give me a little hand raise. How many people recycle old content, or how many people here look at individual post performance over the course of a year? And so if you're not doing that today, I encourage you to go into your analytics. You know what I'm going to do? In my creator newsletter, link to that on my website, I'm going to give a literal how-to of that, like a step-by-step. Maybe I'll shoot a quick video of it because we're running out of time today. But what I encourage you to do is go look at all of your posts from the last year and start sorting it. Which ones had the most reach? Why? Which ones had the most engagement? Why? How many followers did you get from which posts? Why? And for you specifically, start looking at this and answering that question, because it will start to paint a picture of like, okay, these types of stories, or when I do this, it works. How can I do that again? I recycle old content all the time, whether it's the same photos. So on the picture right there, you see one with a pool that looks like a T. I have posted that picture 3 freaking times on my feed. Like, no one knows. No one's like, I've seen that before. No, everyone's like, oh my God, sick picture. How'd you get it? Or like, it's old. Or I've recycled old posts in the content piece and put it to a new image. Because you have to remember, let's jump into analytics. Actually, let's jump into the one that looks like a Google sheet. So 2 more, Leah. Oh, I lied, 3 more, 1 more. So this is really embarrassing for me to share. This is how many people, I guess in that time frame, followed me, unfollowed me, and stayed on with me. And what's important to look at here is that this is normal. What mine looks like for all, like one of my favorite things to do when I hang out with creators is I'm like, give me your phone. Can I look at your analytics really quick? And I'll look. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I've done this with like 100 accounts. This is normal. And what it means is it's a rotating door. It's a rotating door in which people are constantly coming in and constantly going out. So in the context of recycling old posts, I want you to consider, okay, I can repost it. A lot of these people have not seen it. They just came on board. Or go back to in the first 15 minutes of your day, you're consuming more content than your grandparents did in a month. People are being bombarded. They probably missed that post. It's okay. You've worked really hard to create these posts. It's okay to keep using them. Go back 1 slide, Leah, and I'm going to wrap it up in 2 minutes so that, you can do your little closer thing. So on the one that looks like a spreadsheet, yeah, that one. What I'm doing here, and I've given you a truncated version of this, I do a once a month, and it only takes me about 10 minutes. And I do this for all of my social platforms. And this one's specific, obviously, for Instagram. But I'm looking at the number of posts I've made versus the posts I've shared. I'm basically looking at my content. But in the actual sheet, which I've made available to you on my landing page, you will actually get all the metrics I look at. And what I encourage you to do is once a month, start filling this out, because it will track your personal analytics and will help you to start paint that picture of, okay, I tried this month, that didn't work. Let's try doing something else. Like let's try scaling back, or let's try fill in the blank. Because let's just talk about 2 other ways to kind of things that you can test within doing your analytics. Let's jump to the photo of me and Meatball at the sunset. So you can't forget that Instagram is a place of photos. Once you're really big or you're famous or your audience really loves you, you don't have to be big for your audience to love you. Your audience really loves you, you can start to post really ugly things on your feed. But until then, Instagram first is a place of pictures, and you need to post decent photos. Doesn't mean you have to be an amazing photographer, decent photos. Too many people think that their audience will read their post, and that's not necessarily true. The way I think about it, give people what they want, the beautiful photo. Give people what they might want, which is a meaningful post that's either helpful or helps people to connect to the human that you are. And so in this post, it was a very, very honest post about how a year ago, my meatball boyfriend almost died. And I created a podcast episode about it and I wrote about it. You want to know what most people responded to? Sick photo. This is an awesome photo. Where's this beach at? That's amazing. And that's okay. Like, I ain't hurt by that because Instagram's a place of pictures first. But for the people who read it, they were very, very, very moved. It was a very honest post and it really helped them and encouraged a lot of people to go check out that podcast post. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is make sure that there's something for everyone. And you don't always have to write long posts or meaningful posts, mix it up. Because here's one last way, and I'll leave you with this. Here's one thing to consider. And actually, this is a throwback to the Nomadic Network, because Maria is the badass behind the Nomadic Network Instagram account. Hell yeah, she does a fantastic job there. And one of the things they do an amazing job with is they reshare, they collab, and they do social takeovers. And so something to consider in terms of how you grow. Yes, you can stand on your own personal platform all freaking day long and it's hard, or you can team up with people who have the same kind of audience that you have, or an audience that you want to be seen by, and then partner together through collab posts by asking Maria kindly if you can do a social media takeover that will be of value to that audience. Or here's my encouragement to all of you. Get on your Instagram stories. Share something that you learned today. It can be typed, doesn't have to be your face talking if you're not used to video. Tag in the Nomadic Network and tag in me. I will reshare anyone that shares. And then all of a sudden people are like, who's this person? And they'll go to your profile. And once your account is clean, right? You have clear profile, clear highlights. Oh, this person talks about family travel. My favorite family from Eugene right here. Right? I'm going to give them a follow. That sounds really awesome. I'm curious about learners and makers, right? And so consider trying to do that. All right, there's so much more I can share. I am going to share more off of my email newsletter with additional resources. So consider checking that out. And Leah, you're probably going to not be able to ask me a single question because we have 1 minute. So there you go, girlfriend. You're like, thanks for making it so difficult for me today.
No worries. We do have a lot of questions in the chat, but I can also just save it down for those that we didn't get to. You can DM Christine.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this chat. I just pressed, I just saved it all.
The best.
Okay. I just saved the chat. I am personally going to go through the entire chat, and I'm going to create a content piece about it. And it will go onto my ChristineLozada.com create page and my newsletter by tomorrow. That's aggressive. By tomorrow night.
I just dropped Christine and Janine's info in the chat, everyone. Christine, do you have any time to answer a question? Well, you were answering questions throughout the presentation.
I did a bad job. I know there are more questions in there.
That's okay.
And I mean, it's also Instagram. If you have the answer to every question you have, it's impossible. Like, there's just no way, right? What did I start with? You rub the rabbit's foot and you blast that thing to the universe. And you're like, I hope this works. I posted a reel that got just under 1 million views. I thought that thing would have totally bombed, right? I rubbed the rabbit's foot real good on the right side for that one. So it's like, there you go. You just got to keep showing up.
Literally the best piece of advice, consistency first. So I dropped Christine and Janine's info in the chat. Christine said for everyone on her newsletter, on her create page, she's going to create a video that answers all of the questions in the chat. If you want to know how to save the chat, if you are on desktop, there's 3 dots, the bottom right-hand corner, click those 3 dots and click save chat, and it saves to the Zoom folder on your desktop. So you can go ahead and do that. I will also save it. And if you need it, please message the Nomadic Network and one of us will send it out to you. So Christine, this was so incredibly helpful. And I know there's so much, we could talk about Instagram for like 5 hours, right?
Yeah, of
So
course.
thank you everyone for being here. I'm just